Wait. Oh, and we're live, and my forehead is extra shiny. Hi, y'all. Hi, welcome back to my channel. Trying to get my setup together. Let's see. Trying to get it together, y'all. This weekend has been really interesting for me. It's also 4th of July weekend. Not to date this video, but to date this video. I didn't go live yesterday, which was Friday. Usually go live at Friday at 8 p.m. But given the holiday and given the fact that most people are outside at 8 p.m. on the 4th of July because of the what? The fireworks. And that wouldn't have went well anyway, because y'all would have heard all the fireworks in my background. And anyways, I made the best choice and we're here. And I'm so happy that you're here whenever you're watching this. If you're here with me live, hey, y'all, hey. If you're watching this in hindsight, hey, y'all, hey. But top of the top, hey, family. Welcome back to my Becoming Supernatural live reading series. This is a live series, but I read the book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, Becoming Supernatural, chapter by chapter. I break it down. I discuss my personal reflections, and we go live twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. And quite honestly, next week is our last week going live on this book because chapter 14 is next, and that's actually the final chapter of the book. And I'm going to miss doing this, but I think I might just continue by reading some of my favorite, most transformative books. Or I might just linger with this a little bit because this work alone is a lifestyle. It is something that you definitely want to adopt, especially as you start to see how different your life is as you become more and more of yourself, which is supernatural, right? So, if this is your first time here, I'm Brittany. Hey, your manifesting mentor. I'm not a coach, I'm not a guru, but I'm a woman who walks the walk and who shares what works. Today, we are finishing chapter 13, Project Coherence, Making a Better World. And we're covering parts 4 and 5. And this is where Dr. Joe moves from personal healing to impact or collective impact. So, because when enough of us tune into elevated states together, we create something bigger than ourselves. It becomes an electromagnetic field that heals, that restores, and that reorganizes the world around us. So we're not just doing this work to make our personal lives better, our personal relationships and personal dynamics and personal circumstances better, because that's a side effect of what happens when you do this work. The other side effect of what happens when you do this work is when you come together with other people who are also doing this work. This is why Dr. Joe Dispenza's workshops are so coveted. This is why there's waiting lists every single workshop, no matter what country or city he is in, because when people start doing this work and they see the magic, and it's not magic, it's just literally our personal nature, we just forgot. But when they see the magic, the power of their intention, the power of regulating their nervous system, the power of healing that they have, not just for themselves, but for others, they want to get with others who are doing the work. Because when you come together, the energy in the space grows in the environment, right? Dr. Joe talks in this chapter about measuring the energy in the room of the workshops that he hosts. But he goes even further. He talks about the coherence healing, how you're not only able to raise the frequency of your body to regulate your own nervous system for your own sake, but you're doing it when you participate in coherence healings. It's where two or more gather to set an intention, raise the frequency of their minds and their bodies and their emotions, and send that loving energy to someone else to help energetically raise them up in consciousness and in their electromagnetic field to heal. And in essence, it works. It's been proven to work. They are doing it over and over again. And this is how people are getting their um, spontaneous remissions, spontaneous healings, spontaneous manifestations, especially when they are participating in these workshops. But what we talked about during the readings is that you can do this at home. Your mere practice of this, taking it seriously, not just when you go to a workshop, but in your day to day life, because the real magic is not in attending a workshop. The real magic is not just when you're with someone who's practicing it. The real magic is how you're bringing your meditation into your day to day experiences, into your day to day dynamics, conversations, actions that you take, tasks that you're in charge of. How are you bringing your future self to those circumstances? Because that is where the magic happens. That's where the synchronicities show up. That's where the problems get resolved. That's where, the breakthroughs happen. That's where the relationships are transformed. When you bring your meditation to your day to day life and make it a practice. So we're learning here with Dr. Joe's teachings that starting in part 4, we learn about coherence versus incoherence and what that looks like. And we've talked about these concepts in earlier chapters, but he's bringing it back up because he wants us to really understand what being coherent versus being incoherent looks like in day to day life in relationship to other people, because we're talking about collective consciousness. There is a shared pool of invisible energy called our unified field that we all exist in. And it's the thing that connects all of us, right? None of us are separate because of this field that we all exist in. Think of it like an invisible pool that encompasses the entire planet or more, right? And I might not know you. I may have never met you. I live on another side of the planet. But because we all exist in this pool, think of it like the ocean. If we all exist in it, we're all connected. So, however I'm feeling, my energy is being sent out into this field and it's affecting things around me and people around me, whether my energy levels are high and I'm in elevated emotions or if I'm in the low vibrational emotions. We're affecting one another. So, this is what he's teaching. So, in part 4, because I went on a tangent if you caught that, but smooth transitioner here. But part 4, he talks about the difference between coherent and an incoherent system. Coherence is harmony, right? It's when your heart, your brain, and your energy flow are in alignment. And incoherence is the opposite of that. It's when it's basically resistance. It's when fear, stress, and separation take over. And where are we witnessing this right now? In politics, in the world around us right now. If you're paying attention to the headlines and the news, there is so much incoherence, so much separation, so much fear, so much stress, right? Being perpetuated, projected, felt collectively because we feel each other in this unified, invisible ocean called the unified field, right? But he's talking about how we can learn how to manage ourselves in it and connect with others who are doing that as well. And collectively, we can change some stuff. So pay attention, y'all. We don't just live in these states personally, we emit these states, coherence or incoherence. And when millions of people are living in chronic survival, it creates a collective incoherence that impacts our environments, communities, and even global events. And this is what we are witnessing. If you've been, again, paying attention to the headlines, I need y'all to really pay attention to this chapter of the book because not only is this book transformative for your personal life, but it will help you become a beacon, a vessel for transformation. Not because you're walking around fixing people. For transformation. Not because you're walking around fixing people. I don't know. Not because you're. Oh my God. I don't know what that was. I trusted Dusty Phone just did something real interesting, y'all. And we're going to talk about that too. But I don't like that because I didn't know that my voice was being recorded. I don't like that at all. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. All right, I'm gonna get back to it. But as I was saying, we don't just live these states personally, we actually emit them. And when millions of us are living in coherence or chronic survival, it creates a collective incoherence that impacts our environments, our communities, and even global events. I'm not going to act like what just happened didn't just happen. I just have to keep it moving and we're going to talk about it later, okay? At any rate, When we intentionally shift into elevated states together, gratitude, love, compassion, we create a measurable collective frequency that invites healing and order into chaos. All right, so that's the power of this work. And again, when do we need this work to be done? Right now, more than ever. If you're being called to this work, it's because there's something personally there for you. But I also feel like this work finds people when the divine wants it to find people. So if you're finding it at this time, it's because the collective consciousness needs you. It needs you to do the work for yourself, but it also needs you to connect with others who are doing the work for themselves, because collectively, there's already millions of people living in incoherence states, in states of chronic stress, chronic dysregulation that are impacting our environment, our communities, and global events. A lot of rage is being spewed all over the place. A lot of trauma is being projected, and people are feeling it because we are existing collectively in this unified field, this invisible pool or ocean of energy, and we're emitting energy from ourselves. We're basically sharing this energy with other people and everything in our lives, because energy is not something that can be destroyed. It can only be transferred from one source to the next. This is science, okay? And because energy can never be destroyed and can only be transferred from one source to the next, whenever there is this collective um, incoherent state of resistance, and there's a collective millions of people feeling it, that is being transferred not just to each other, but to our environment around us. It's influencing our decision making, you know, um, different circumstances that we find ourselves in collectively. And we got to do something with that. We got to do something with that energy. We got to learn how to be the alchemists of our own lives and transmute the energy. And if this work is not showing you how to do that, I don't know what else could save humanity at this time. But this work is transformative on a personal level, and it's transformative on a collective level. And that's basically what we're getting at. That is the power of this work, as being taught by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and it's being practiced by every student who comes across to implement his formula, to see the changes and the transformation happen in their personal life, and then to go out into the world, connect with others who are doing this work, and make an impact collectively. Someone says, can you feel when someone else is in a regulated, coherent state? And how does it affect you? The answer is yes, 100%. You can feel it in their presence. Do people feel calm in your presence, especially when all hell breaks out? Are you the one that people come to because they're freaking the heck out, but they know somehow, some way, you're going to be the one to help them see a different perspective and find calm? Because if so, that is a sign of a regulated nervous system, a regulated, heart centered, coherent person. You feel safe, you feel grounded, and even uplifted just by being near this person. If it's you, it's you, it's me. I've been that person. I am that person. I was always that person in terms of just helping to be a safe space for people. But it wasn't until I learned how to change my energy that it goes without me even speaking words, right? Just my presence alone makes a difference. And I know that. I hear the feedback from my family members. I hear the feedback from people that I work with, people that my friends that know me. Um, the work that you do on yourself benefits everyone who's connected to you. And that's as far as I would go with it, because and that's as far as I will go with it in terms of understanding if you're that, if you're being that, and just understanding that when you do this work, what it means, what are the implications of it. So back to the point, they're not projecting energy, they're actually anchoring it. So I don't have to go out and try to like meditate and then say, oh, I'm going to spread peace around. It's just in the way that I respond. So while the person next to me or who's talking to me might be freaking out about something, I'm listening to them, but I'm super calm because I'm just listening to them. I'm not here to take a side. I'm not here to encourage whatever spiral they might be having or even pull them back. I'm literally just calm and like at peace. And what happens when I'm in that space is the person talking to me, they can then figure out their own problem because they're no longer in that negative spiral of emotion, so they can think clearly, because I'm not adding any extra thoughts. I'm just being a open vessel of groundedness, of anchoring into my coherence. And that's what I aspire to be more and more. And someone whose frequency brings people home to themselves is really what it boils down to being. So, this is how you know if someone else is in a regulated, coherent state, and how it also affects you or other people. Hope that helps. Question number 2: when the world feels heavy, how do you return to inner coherence without checking out? Baby, that's the best question that I've seen this whole series, because the entire premise of Dr. Joe's teachings is not for you to just sit on a meditation seat and meditate your life away, to be a monk in the cave. It's actually the total opposite. He gets you to understand how to do this work in your private life. Make time for yourself to do this work, because every intention is for you to go out into your life and engage with the very same cycles, the very same patterns, the very same people with the same dynamics every single day. But the challenge is for you to be different in all of these same, seemingly same scenarios. As Neville Goddard would put it, everything that's in your current reality is your is ramifications of the old man. And as Dr. Joe teaches, is your present past, your past present, basically, is what he calls it, your past present, because everything in your present is evidence of your past, who you used to be, right? But as you continue to face the very same scenarios, very same people, very same dynamics, very same circumstances, but in essence, you are the one continuing to evolve. You are the one becoming conscious of your emotional state, changing your state when it's not cohesive, when it's not coherent, changing your reactions and how you react to people, instead changing them into responses, being very clear on your choices and decision making. You are in essence being different. You're bringing a different energy into all of those things that are seemingly the same. But what happens is, as you continue to show up different to those seemingly same circumstances, you will notice that they start to change. And why do they change? Because of you. Because you, as the observer, have changed your energy that you bring to the circumstance. So when people say they want their lives to change, they in essence are working backwards, because they think they need to force, control, and manipulate the factors in their life to change them. And as my mama would say, you take yourself wherever you go. So if you don't like the dynamics at a job and you just quit the job, but you don't learn the lessons about who you've been, you're just going to take your same self to another circumstance, another situation. And what you might find is the same kind of characters, different faces, same kind of dynamics, just different places, same kind of lessons, but different spaces, right? And I didn't try to rhyme, but I got bars. Anyways, but that's because if you don't change at the core, you in essence are the signal. You are the satellite that's sending out a very particular signal of who you are being, and something very particular is attracted to your very particular signal. So this is why people can say, well, why do I keep dating the same person over and over again? Why do I keep having the same dynamics in relationships? Because in essence, if you don't change something about the energy signal that you're sending out, your thoughts and emotions, how you think and how you feel on a day-to-day basis, given different scenarios, given different dynamics, given different characters, if you don't change, then nothing changes. Yep. And so basically for me, um, when it comes to this, when the world feels heavy, how do you return to inner coherence without checking out? For me, it's breath work, it's meditation, it's unplugging from the noise, not to stick my head in the sand and not know what's going on, because I read the news every day. I don't read it for the sake of it consuming me. I read it when I'm in a good, clear space to read it without taking in the emotions of my past reactions, right, of the collective reactions, because right now the collective, the noise is very loud. Everybody wants you to pick a side. Everybody wants to condemn the other side. Everybody wants to, point the finger and blame everybody outside of them for what's happening, when in essence collectively we've all allowed it. We've all allowed it, and we really have to look in the mirror and see ourselves. So for me, it's about breathing. It's about meditating, reflecting. Who have I been? Who am I showing up as? What am I doing? And how, even though all these narratives are going on in the outer world, What is my inner world narrative? Because I could try to do something in the outer world and fix the world out there, but I really need to sweep in front of my own front door and back door and make sure that who I portray myself to be for the world, am I being that with the people in my life? Am I being that with my spouse? Am I being that with my siblings? Am I being that with my parents? Am I being that with my best friends, my girlfriends, my guy friends? Am I being that with my cousins? Am I being that with my coworkers, whether I like them or not? Am I being that with the stranger in the grocery store? Am I being that with the homeless man on the street? Because your everyday moment to moment choices is who you really are, not the little carved out moments of philanthropy that we like to participate in, the marches and all of that stuff. It's very courageous on the surface when you do that stuff, but it's who you're really being in your day-to-day life personally, because your nervous system gets the hit. It gets the first hit with everything that you're processing in your life, right? And this is why, when disease creeps up and we don't realize that we've been mismanaging our energy, and things spring up out of seemingly nowhere, and then we got to find ourselves relying on traditional modern Western medicine and all that. Listen, when you take care of this here, and then you take care of your immediate proximity, from there, then you can contribute even more to the collective. Because in essence, when you take care of this right here, this is helping you take care of your immediate proximity. And taking care of your immediate proximity has rippling effects as well, because everybody that you're in contact with now becomes activated with your energy. They do, because we're affecting each other. So it's a moment to moment thing. Who do I want to be in this moment? It's always asking yourself that throughout the day. Who do I want to be in this moment with this circumstance? And I try to shift from reacting to remembering. This is what I do when I share my embodiment posts over on TikTok. It's about remembering that I'm the observer. I am literally the observer. My attention is the greatest currency in this experience, period. That's why Neville says imagination is God. Not because he's trying to pull some weird concept, but literally, if your consciousness was not in your body would just be a shell. It's like a corpse. It would be a corpse without the animation of your spirit, of your consciousness, right? So as pure consciousness, if you removed your identity, you removed your body, energy is never destroyed. It's only transferred from one source to the next. When we leave these bodies, our spirit is ever everlasting, right? We return to source or incarnate, or however, whatever you might believe in. But all religions point to incarnation, whether you call it heaven or hell. We are pure energy. And as pure energy, while we're living in these bodies, there's a consciousness behind the consciousness. We are observing our patterns. We're observing our thoughts. We're observing our emotions. We're observing the choices that we're making. We're observing the actions that we're taking. We're observing everything. So you are not the actual chaos. You are the observer of the chaos. And as the observer of the chaos, you get to remember who you are, the role that you're playing. You get to decide who you want to be in the midst of the chaos. You could be a part of the chaos, which is part of the problem, or you could be a part of the solution, which is a part of the coherence, right? So it's not about pretending that things aren't hard, because life is hard for everybody. Everybody got problems, y'all. Nobody, if you are in this physical 3D reality, you have problems. Nobody's life is perfect, right? But that's not to say that it can't be easy parts of life, lighthearted parts of life, free parts of life, peaceful parts of life. But you get to cultivate that. You get to decide as the observer, what role am I playing in all of this, right? It's about staying centered in love while still being human, recognizing your humanity, recognizing your emotions, but understanding that you are not the emotions. You are the observer behind the emotions. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer behind the thoughts. You are not the experience. You are the observer of the experience. You are pure consciousness, and you get to decide who you want to be in the midst of all of the happenings. And that is how, even when the world feels heavy, this is how you return to inner coherence without checking out, without putting your head in the sand. All right, I hope that helps. Also, we're moving into part 5, which is Project Coherence. This is where Dr. Joe talks about, hold on, let me take a sip. This is not sponsored, by the way. Not sponsored, but I need to get sponsored because that's my vision of the future. Very good. Very nice. So in part five, Project Coherence, Dr. Joe introduces Project Coherence, and it's where thousands of people gather across the world to enter elevated emotional states together. The goal is to radiate love, unity, and healing as a group, creating a measurable shift in the electromagnetic field of the entire planet. So, in part chapter 12, we talked about, no, actually, chapter 13, parts 1 through 3, we talked about the Schumann resonance. And that is basically the heartbeat of planet Earth. It is the frequency at which the Earth's core radiates at, and I think it's part is 73 or 78.3 megahertz or hertz, something along those lines. I might have screwed the number up. But that frequency, that resonance is so important because it's the exact same frequency that the human brain and heart resonate at when it is in coherence. In coherence, not incoherence, but when it is coherent. I always mix those words up, y'all. But basically, when we are collectively in brain and heart coherence, we are resonating at the same frequency as the core of the earth, which means we have an influence. We have a connection with the core of the earth, and our resonance is affecting everything on the earth. So, this isn't a theory, you guys. This is backed by data in this chapter. Lower crime rates, collective synchronicities, heart and brain coherence across participants, even changes in the weather and behavioral patterns. So he also outlines the Project Coherence meditation in this section, which invites us to move beyond ourselves and into oneness. We don't just meditate for us, our individual selves. We do it for those who haven't yet learned how to regulate their emotions, for those who are still in survival, and for the world. Because let me tell you, not everybody's going to crack open this book. I know that. That's why I'm reading it here on YouTube. I know that there will be people who will see my content and resonate with the information, but will never pick up the book. That's why I decided to read the chapters for them, because at minimum, they can listen, or at maximum, they can tune into my stories and different mini breakdowns of each part of the chapter as I explain and express what these teachings mean and the implications of daily life as I share my embodiment posts, whether I'm showing off my fashion, but I'm also sharing how I'm processing the information, what these lessons mean for me, how I'm showing up different in my everyday life. And so many people are resonating with it, right? So, because not everybody's going to read these books, not everybody's going to understand emotional regulation, they're not going to know how to regulate their nervous system. They don't have to. Everybody play your role. So if I'm the one in the group that knows how to do it, me being regulated alone is influencing everything and everyone around me. And so that's why we learn this work. That's why we do this work, because it's not meant necessarily for everybody to play the same role. But if you come across this information, consider yourself activated, like a Power Ranger, like a superhero, Marvel style. You have the ability to change the world by changing yourself. So when you shift into an elevated emotion and broadcast it outward, you become the actual blessing. You are the blessing. And that's why we do this work, because we realize that I'm not just blessing my life by learning how to work with myself and be one with the divine, but I am becoming a blessing by doing this work, because my demonstration, the energy that I show up with when I walk in a room now, is shifting everything that I come in contact with. You're helping people find themselves because your energy, your frequency is that frequency that is reminiscent of being home. It makes people feel grounded. You are anchored in the divine. You are a demonstration of what it means to be divine love and energy. And it's influencing everything and everyone. So, someone asked, have you ever meditated with the intention of healing or supporting others? And what shifted for you? The answer is yes and yes. I Like I mentioned, I grew up Christian Baptist. I shared one of my TikTok videos and my YouTube shorts, and in a couple of my lives going back now, where we practice intercessory prayer as Christian Baptists. That means that groups of us would get together and decide to pray for someone who was sick or someone who was going through some hard times or experiencing hardship or emotional turmoil or for marriages, whatever the case may be. I grew up in a church that did that for people. My grandmother was big on that. And I had mentors who were also big on that. And so I had a mentor, Miss Annie Smith. That's my lady. She's still my A1 day one, and she's someone that I call. But she taught me a lot about intercessory prayer, and we would pray for people. And if I had a problem, I would turn to her because for whatever reason, that woman, her energy is in such an intense, divine, loving. I don't even know how to describe it. But whenever she would pray for you, she wouldn't just pray for you, she prayed with you. And as she prayed with you, whatever doubt you had would literally go out the window like it never existed. And your faith would become so hardened into fact, like Neville says, that God heard you. And you knew it heard you because of the way she prayed, she spoke in tongues, all the things. And my prayers were always answered, especially when I got her on the case. Because if I ever doubted and I ever wavered, she was there to strengthen my faith. And it was just really her presence. I mean, the words she said, very impactful. She spoke things into existence, but really it was her beingness, her energy, her knowingness, and the intensity in which she was not easily moved by any circumstances that she would see or that you would tell her. So it's always a powerful experience to pray for other people because when someone is feeling weak in their space or not believing or don't even have the spiritual foundation, but they trust that you, in your personal practice, are someone who is a believer and has the faith for things that are not seen as though they are. Right, like that is a very powerful space to dwell in, and people see that as something that they aspire to have. Right, but I realize my power in that just from having that around me and growing up in that. So when I shift my focus from what can I get in my life for me to how can I give from a full heart? How can I support this person who's in need right now, who might be sick, who might be suffering from different circumstances in life? Every single thing changes for me. And what we learn in this community, and even Dr. Joe talks about it at his workshops, the people who come to the workshop and they are designated as coherence healers, meaning they are part of the collective who are going to come together to intentionally send loving divine energy, healing energy to someone who might be sick. They're not in the receptive mode in that moment. They are in the giving mode. And they are putting all of their love, intentions, and divine energy into giving to someone else. And what happens is they in turn receive love. A lot of cases have come out where he says that the person who went in to go heal someone else ended up healed. And they weren't even going into the healing for themselves. So there's something to be said about the supernatural when you are giving from a space of pure intentions that you become the one who gets blessed in the process. So it's like the energy expands beyond me and makes room for miracles, right? And it's not just the miracle that's bestowed upon the person that I'm sending the energy to, but it's also the miracles bestowed upon myself. And that's when I feel closest to source. When I stop trying to control and start radiating love. When I stop trying to manipulate or figure out how something is going to happen and just fall into trust and just focus on what I love in my present day, my present moment, right? What can I appreciate in this present moment? And how can I really expand that appreciation, expand that love, share it with the people that are in my space at the time? You know, send loving thoughts. You know, as Neville talked about, and I mentioned Neville as well, Neville always taught to lift others on high. And he says, as you do so, you are shining a light in the world, but you become a beaming, literally a beaming source of light yourself. And so I really resonated with Neville's teachings, not just because, you know, he talked about being able to imagine and assume more lovely things and change your own life, but because he taught us to do the same for other people. He told you if you met someone who was in a downtrodden state, do not leave them there. If they came to you with a problem, if they lost their job, if they were sick or whatever, you are to lift them on high in your imagination. Because if imagination creates, why are you continuing to allow others to dwell in suffering in your imagination, even if it is on the surface appearing so? If imagination creates, why not use that powerful tool to activate something different and something new for someone else? And that's what allows us to understand that we're not just doing this work for ourselves, we're doing it for the collective, and it matters. I hope that helps. That was another tangent, but I love questions like that because it gets me to thinking, and I think a lot more than I share. Anyways, how would the world change if more people led with elevated emotions instead of fear? Oh, y'all. I look at how my personal life has changed. I exist with a lot more peace. I exist with a lot more calm. And it's not because I have less problems. In fact, I would say I probably have more problems. But I don't feel like I have more problems. I feel like I have less problems because I realize that problems aren't problems. In other words, I realize that the problems are only as big as I energetically feed into them. A problem is only as significant as I emotionally and thoughtfully, energetically feed into it. So, again, it's not because I have less problems that I live with more peace. It's because I've learned how to live with more peace regardless of what's happening around me. And so, if everybody did this, if everybody found the kind of peace that I have now, again, not because I have less problems, but because I've learned to exist more coherently, more peacefully. But don't get it twisted. We all have duality. I can chitty chitty bang bang. I could rumble tumble with the best of them. And this is what I need people to know about, people who practice these practices. Like, I choose to be more light than dark, but I got dark in me. We all do. I don't care how angelic a person might appear to be. If they wanted to go dark, that's a choice, and they could. We all can. We exist in a world of polarity and duality, but I choose to be a vessel of light. So, with that being said, if others made the choice to be vessels of light and to exist more peacefully, more calmly, we'd have so, like, imagine if the MAGA, no offense to anybody, and I hate to be political, but there's a lot of rage, frustration, anger on not just that side, but both sides. But I see it a lot from that side, I would say a lot more. And in that, if they would have a lot more peace and calm in their day to day lives about themselves, those of them who are more rageful, if they had more peace and calm about themselves, and I'm not saying that the circumstances on the surface aren't things to be mad about. Everybody can be mad about things on both sides, as respectfully, rightfully so. But if you can choose to exist with less rage and anger and frustration and exist in more love and see your connectiveness, then you'd be less prone to want to wish ill will onto others, to want to wish the worst for others, to, project, such negativity and vitriol and imagine such unlovely things for others. It would change the way that you exist in the world, in your everyday life, in your interactions, and also how you show up in different spaces. You wouldn't want to see people in concentration camps in 2025, um, because of things that aren't always within their control. You wouldn't want to wish any illness onto other people. You wouldn't want to wish harm onto other people. You just think completely different. So for me, I feel like we'd all communicate differently. We'd all vote very differently. We raise our children very differently. There will be less defensiveness and more understanding, a lot less fear, and a lot more unity. Um, but it starts with us, the individual, right? We look at these collective conscious things that are happening around the globe right now, the politics, just the vitriol and the news cycles. And it's easy to project that outwardly, but you got to ask yourself the hard questions. Where have I allowed this kind of divisiveness to dwell within my personal life, within my personal ideas, within my judgments about other people? Where have I allowed this to fester? Where have I allowed anger, frustration, hatred to fester in my personal life? Because that's where your healing begins. And as you heal yourself, again, everything you touch becomes transformed. When I started healing generational trauma within me, other people around me who's connected to me in my day to day life, they started healing generational trauma because my energy presented the demonstration. Not just what I did on the surface, but also my energy. Right. And then they started saying, well, I feel safe. I feel grounded. I could overcome this. This isn't the truth of who I am either. And you give, like, when you shine your light, as Williamson said, I think it was in her book, A Return to Love, one of the greatest spiritual books I've ever read. But A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. And by the way, she also ran for president multiple times. They tried to paint her as a crazy person, but a lot of people just weren't woke. But Marianne Williamson said, when you allow your light to shine, you give others permission to do the same. And this quote has been how do you say, misattributed to other people like Martin Luther King, but that was totally Marianne Williamson. And there's proof. She wrote a book at any rate. But it starts with us in the moment, right now, in the way we show up in ordinary moments, who we're being ripples outward. And even when no one is watching, that is what you want to pay attention to. Who am I being when no one's watching? What kind of judgments, what kind of thoughts am I allowing to permeate my everyday experience? When I'm scrolling down my timeline, how many thoughts that you're thinking are actual judgment for other people, condemnation for other people? How many times are you playing victim? How many times are you projecting your insecurities, comparing? It's just little things, because those little things are your personality. And as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, your personality creates your what? Your personal reality. So these things affect everything. And so, getting back to my personal reflection, this chapter made me think about how easy it is to forget who we are when things feel tense. And this is related to all the questions I got about today's times and how we practice this work. Listen, especially in the world right now, this chapter is so prevalent, so relevant. I'm sorry. But we've talked about in past lives about how old cycles and patterns can creep in. How when we're triggered, it's tempting to slip back into the old self, right? We're looking at the headlines. Things are being very reminiscent of the early ages in America, where racism was, Jim Crow was loud and proud, and Black people are being traumatized all over again, because everything that's happening to Black and brown people now with immigration is very reminiscent of slavery days. And this concentration camp and everything that's happening is very reminiscent of slavery. I'm just going to call it what it is. And so it's happening in 2025. And we got to look ourselves in the mirror and ask, how the fuck did we get here? Yes, I dropped the F bomb because that's the only way to express it. How the fuck did we get here? Anyways, this work reminds us that every moment is a choice, because how we show up, how we treat people in our lives, how we treat ourselves is a reflection of the collective, right? And so every moment is a choice. And to be the energy of peace, or we have to decide, are we going to be the energy of peace, or are we going to be the energy of chaos? And you get to decide which energy you want to contribute to the collective. So lately I've been catching myself mid pattern, and instead of spiraling, I ask myself, I pause, I breathe, and I ask myself, do I want to recreate the past? Because I know what that feels like. I know what my emotional states were like in 2020 and in 2016. I know what I felt like in 2016, when we know what happened in 2016 in America. But I also know that 2024 was another iteration of that same pattern, right? But now things are coming into fruition that didn't come into fruition the first time. And I got to ask myself, do I want to recreate the past, or do I want to create a new future? And that's a simple question. And however I answer that, that's how I show up. So that's what Project Coherence is all about. It's not just meditating once a day and calling it growth, because that's a that's an illusion, right? But it's practicing presence in the day to day. It's being present with your family, in traffic, online, people with Twitter thumbs and saying all kind of crazy stuff, but trying to pretend like they are so. Come on, y'all. We got to do better. Practicing it online, practicing it at work with your coworkers that you can't stand. Listen, coherence isn't just a moment, it's a way of being. And you get to choose every single day, moment to moment, who you want to be. So if this conversation moved you, I encourage you to please go watch the full series, parts 1 through 5 of chapter 13 are now live on my YouTube channel. And I promise you, y'all, I promise you, this one will expand how you see your entire role in the collective. Right? You're not just an individual, you matter. If you were incarnated, if the divine chose you, of all the sperm that your pappy shot, let me okay, I was about to get really inappropriate. But anyways, of all the combinations of humans that could have come into carnation, you came and you're here. So you matter. And if you're here watching this came to you for a reason. Like I said, the divine knows how to find its people, and it knows how to find the right teachers to activate you. And if you're watching my content, I'll be that. I'll be that. So the playlist is linked in my bio, both here and on TikTok. Whether you're just starting or joining from chapter 13, this work meets you wherever you are. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your intention to become supernatural. We are really making a better world, one elevated emotion at a time. I don't know who needs to hear this, but this is your reminder, and you got this.